Welcome, bros and brosophines. My name's Albrecht von Stollen, and today I'm gonna be reviewing episode 4 of Taisho Otome Otogibanashi. Something tells me that this is gonna be very good indeed. Am I right or wrong? Before things get heated, let's go! This has been a painful week with Crunchyroll releasing High Guardian Spies a la Netflix, where it's all the episodes at once. After slugging through that mess and the HGS fans shilling it all over Twitter.com, I decided to watch episode 4 of Taisho Otome. Let's just say that it's a relief. After the maiden description and the opening song, we're greeted to what appears to be early summer of 1922, a scene with that cicada on a tree and the cicada noises. Typical Japanese summer. We get a scene of Tamahiko looking for a book to read as he's read all of the ones at home. He remembers how he, as a member of the infamous Shima family, was ostracized by his classmates and how his time in school is all in the past. Is this foreshadowing? After this, we get scenes of Yuzuki and Tamako listening to Kotori Shiratori's music, with Tamako's hair looking like Kotori's. Tamako tells Yuzuki to do her hair like Kotori's, and we found out why she can't. Fluffy hair! Tamako loves the fluffy hair anyways as it's cute. Tamahiko shows up, Tamako tells him that invading upon the maiden's room is a crime, and we get a montage of Yuzuki doing chores. Also, look at that round cat! This cat's been around since episode 1 and it has a different color from the one in the manga. I take it. It's so cute and round regardless. Now, I want to know who's singing in the background. After that scene, we see Tamahiko reading something while Yuzuki fans him. He remarks that it's been 6 months since Yuzuki showed up, and we see a flashback from episode 2 that Yuzuki wants to get to know Tamahiko and love him. Tamahiko's being a tsundere again, is he? Yuzuki tries to get barley tea before falling over Tamahiko. She's kinda tired, then gets flustered over falling on Tamahiko. He tells her that she can lean on him and she happily does it. He says that he's a pillar. Wait a minute, he's not from Demon Slayer, is he? That would be weird. Joking aside, she tries to get barley tea again before falling in the hallway this time. Tamahiko tries to help Yuzuki, but as he only has one working hand, so it's Tamako who helps her into Tamahiko's room. Yuzuki appears to have come down with a fever, and yet she still tells her Shima siblings that she made food for them. Tamako decided to go down to the village to look for a doctor, and Tamahiko fetches water from a well. Tamako and the down doctor, along with his nurse, show up and go see Yuzuki in Tamahiko's room. Meanwhile, Tamako sees her brother wiping off the water that came from when he had tripped carrying a bucket of water earlier. Tamako gets the water instead, and Tamahiko feels useless. I'll talk about Tamahiko's feeling of helplessness and uselessness later. After giving Yuzuki some medicine in the consultation, Tamahiko thanks the doctor and hands him the money, but the doctor berates Tamahiko about how the Shima family is evil, about Yuzuki being overworked, about how Yuzuki being bought as a servant of the Shima family, about how Tamako treated everyone in the village as her servants, and how money can't fix all the problems like his right hand. Tamako shows up, being menacing, and tells the doctor that the door is that way. I swear, this face is made for Halloween. She calms her brother down by saying that the Shima family members are just tall, about how some villagers offered to help her get from the train station to his place, how she thanked them, and his relationship with Yuzuki. Tamahiko blames himself for Yuzuki's condition when Tamako tells him that it's her, and by that, I mean Tamako's fault. Tamahiko then tells Tamako to take care of Yuzuki, and she goes all tsundere on him. We get a montage of his guilt where we see a doll that looks like Yuzuki fall down and she gets broken, along with how his right hand had turned into a rock. Hold it! This is better animated than this idiotic scene from Crunchyroll's Vanity Project. Later, Tamako shows up with a towel and a bucket, ready to take care of Yuzuki. She sees Yuzuki up and ready. Yuzuki is worried about Tamahiko, and Tamako asks her what does she ever see in him. In a montage, Yuzuki tells of how one of her friends was being abused by the latter's own mom. Yuzuki's mom tells Yuzuki to treat her friend kindly in order for Yuzuki's friend to be happy. Thus, the same situation also applies to Tamahiko. Yuzuki gets flustered about it. Tamako later realized that her body moved on its own when she tried to help Yuzuki. This is some good character development there for the both of them. Tamahiko checks up on Yuzuki this time. Upon entering her room, Tamahiko discovers that Yuzuki's bleeding and can't breathe, as she wasn't coughing up any blood and that the bleeding came from her hand trying to loosen up her binders under her chest. He decides to loosen up said very tight binders by cutting it with a pair of scissors. Meanwhile, Tamako is asleep in the bath. Tamahiko stumbles upon the discovery that Yuzuki is well endowed. The two of them are flustered. Tamahiko discovering that Yuzuki is well endowed and Yuzuki herself being shocked that Tamahiko had found out about her being well endowed. I'll be returning to this later as this will be very controversial. Tamahiko apologizes and blames himself for being useless. He even tells her that she can go now. After this, she embraces him and tells him that she'll be by his side and how she's a strong girl. This is complemented by a reprise of his guilt montage from earlier but with a twist, that the Yuzuki doll is not broken. The next day, we see Tamahiko waking up to the smell of Hitsumi and Yuzuki tells him that Tamako had made rice balls. In that moment, something changed in Tamahiko. No longer feeling useless nor helpless, he gains resolve to protect and cherish her smile. Tamahiko realizes that he's forgetting to be a pessimist, that tsundere is strong in this one. All of a sudden, Tamako tells them that she's going back home to become a doctor, much to the surprise of Tamahiko and Yuzuki, and thus the episode ends. So, where do I begin with this episode? The addition of an insert song is quite fitting with the chore montage from earlier. Perhaps this foreshadows Kotori a bit more. Next is the part about Tamahiko feeling useless. This is quite relatable as he's technically a person with a disability. That being said, he was able to get a motivation to get past his despair due to Yuzuki motivating him with her genuine kindness. After this, I'm going after Yuzuki being well endowed as this is gonna be the most controversial part of this episode and by extension this review. We've already seen what happens when someone who is short and baby-faced is well endowed. I am looking at Uzaki-chan here and how Twitter's woke crowd got offended at the notion of a short woman being well endowed. Seeing as Yuzuki is underage, her figure will be deemed as problematic by certain online groups and this accusation will have actual ammunition because of it. That being said, her design works as it's quite modest. At the same time, her characterization also works well as she's not sexualized, and while she's shy about it, the way it was portrayed comes off as realistic done right rather than exaggerated for fan service. Truly, this is outside of the cliche of fan service anime. This episode follows the first part of chapter 7 along with the entirety of chapter 8 from the manga. We also get the beginning of chapter 25 of the manga with a Kotori scene. Now, what do I think of this episode? Overall, it's a very good episode as it adds more depth to Tamahiko, it gives more character development to the Shima siblings, and Yuzuki's origin also gets mentioned along with the character development that she gets. The insert song is quite good and I will be looking for it one of these days. The Kotori scene itself makes her out to be more popular ahead of her original appearance in the manga and it helps gives a sense of continuity between this episode and episode 2. Yuzuki falling ill due to Tamako's appearance shows us that while Yuzuki is strong, she's still human. Her strength comes more from her personality when you really think about it. Tamako being kind fits well with how she looks at this world. I strongly recommend this episode, especially now that things are going more insane, especially with Crunchyroll's Vanity Project being out and about. Come join me next week as I'll review episode 5 of Taisho Otome. Please like, share, and subscribe.